This is a minute I've been waiting for a long time, and I really don't know how to do it. How do you introduce Dr. Allen? Dr. Allen is the minister of the largest Methodist church in the world, First Methodist Church in Houston. He has a membership of over 10,000 people. And coming out here, I was real upset. We had dinner together, and John Seward brought him from the airport to the restaurant. And I noticed he didn't have his notebook or anything, and I just knew that he had forgotten it. And I was trying to figure a real diplomatic way to say, Dr. Allen, have you forgotten your notes? We were going straight to the meeting from here. Worried about it all the way through dinner. And coming out here, I thought, well, I'll ask him. I said, Dr. Allen, how long will you want to speak? I thought maybe that reminded him. He said, it doesn't make any difference. He says, you tell me how long, and it's like an accordion, and I'll just match it. So I'm glad to see he still has the program I gave him. I don't think he has any notes. We're just real thrilled, Dr. Allen, to have you tonight. I'd like to see a show of hands of everyone who has heard Dr. Allen speak. How about that? Well, you see, Dr. Allen, I don't have to introduce you. I will say one thing. When I accepted this job, I asked around about speakers, and I said, who has been the most popular? And Dr. Charles Allen's name came up so many times. We're just real thrilled to have him. And immediately following this message and song by Gil Oxendine, we'll have the message by Dr. Charles Allen.
Shall forget the day that Jesus took my sins away, and I began to live anew. Oh, I never shall forget the way he came into my heart to stay. At last I found a friendship true. First he brushed away the clouds of fear and gave to me a song. Then he promised always to be near and keep me from all wrong. Oh, I never shall forget the day that Jesus took my sins away, and he will do the same for you. Oh, I never shall forget the hour, his saving grace, his cleansing power, redeemed my soul and set me free. There will never be another doubt. There'll never be a day without his smiling face for me to see. I can trust in his unchanging love, for it will never die, till the day he calls me home above to dwell with him on high. Oh, I never shall forget the hour, his saving grace, his cleansing power, redeemed my soul and set me free.
I'm so happy to be here tonight. Yesterday morning, my wife said to me, why are you going to Johnson City? Well, I said there's several reasons. One reason, they've got Harry Jones as chairman this year, and he's the best one they've ever had, and I know it'll be run good, and I look forward to that. And then I could have said, well, Dr. Ferguson Wood called me, and he didn't ask me to come, he just told me. He is an amazing man. He can make you do what you don't want to do. I wanted to come, but he's terrible. I wouldn't belong to his church. He'd work you to death. I could have come, told him I wanted to come and see John Robert Bell and his sweet wife. I've loved them a long time. But although I come because I love to come, and this area. This is the most beautiful section of America. And I get lonely to see the hills and the trees up here. I was driving over to Lake Charles, Louisiana the other night, and I picked up a boys in college in Texas. And we were driving along, and we crossed over the line between Texas and Louisiana. And he leaned back and he said to me, "Do you know the most beautiful sight in all the world?" And I said, "No, I hadn't thought about it. What is it?" He says, "It's Texas through a rear view mirror." And I tell you, it's a great joy. I've been coming up here for many years, and it's just a great joy. I love to come, and I'm grateful to you for letting me come. I'll be speaking at the theater each noon at 12 o'clock downtown, and I hope you'll come. Let's fill the theater. I've been working on what I'll be talking about there this week. I love that service. They do it. It's quickly done, and it's run beautifully, and to me I find great inspiration. So I look forward to seeing you in the morning at noon at 12 o'clock at the theater. But I thought a lot about what I'd talk about tonight, and I come back to the one chapter in the Bible that I love the most, and the one that you love the most, the 23rd Psalm. I've spoken on that before here, but I just sort of felt like I'd like to do it again. The 23rd Psalm is a description of the character and activity of God. There are 9 phrases in the 23rd Psalm that describe God. And then there are 2 conclusions. I don't have time tonight to deal with all 9 of the phrases. I want to say a little more about the 2 conclusions. But the psalmist begins, "The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want." In the early morning, the shepherd would lead the sheep out to where the grass was green, the water was pure. During the day, the shepherd would protect the sheep from the wild animals. He would minister to the sheep if they got hurt. At the close of the day, he would lead them to the shelter and safety of the fold. Just subconsciously, this little sheep began to realize, as long as I have this shepherd, all of my needs will be met. Now, after a long life, David looks back and sees how that in every circumstance, God has been sufficient. And with confidence, he declares, "The Lord is my shepherd." In another place, the psalmist says, "Never have I seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread." You know, come to think about it, I never have either. Have you ever seen a righteous person really begging? I believe tremendously in the providence of God. Sometimes I get bothered. I have in my study on the desk a little paperweight. You've seen them. It's a little glass sphere filled with water. And inside there's a little man. And every now and then I pick it up and I begin to shake it up. And it gets real cloudy inside. And I begin talking to my little man. I say, "Little man, you're worried. You're being shaken up. Your world is being shaken up. But little man, I have you right here in my hand. And I'm going to hold it real still, and I hold it. And it clears up. And I say, you see, little man, you didn't have to worry. I had you all the time. And you know, talking to my little man, I'm talking about to myself. I have a little home, a lovely home down on the Gulf of Mexico. Sitting right on the Gulf of, right by the water. A man built it and gave it to me. I don't have many rich friends, but I pray every day for the few I have. Now I tell you. But it's a lovely little home. I go down there and I sit on a porch and I look out far as you can see across the water. I think about those words. In his hands are the deep places of the earth. I think about a God big enough and great enough to hold the world in his hands. You know, ever so often, I hear somebody say, anything can happen. But I'm telling you, nothing can happen that God doesn't permit to happen. Now, we see through a glass darkly. There are many things that happen we can't understand, we can't explain. But we need to always remember, he has the world in his hands. We sing a little song about that. He has your world, he has you. You're not an orphan. If you could just believe that. I tell you, it takes all the dread and fear out of tomorrow. Not long ago, I was driving through North Georgia. We went through a little town in North Georgia. And I said to my wife, do you remember when we thought we were going to come to this town to be the minister? They told us we were going. But then some things changed and they had to make some adjustments. And they sent somebody else there. And we were so disappointed. We had our heart set. But now I look back. This June I will have been a pastor for 40 years. And I look back over those 40 years and I tell you, I believe somehow the hand of providence has been on my life. I believe that. It's turned out a lot better than I ever dreamed it would turn out. And I've come to this feeling. If God would take an interest in my life, the last 40 years, he'll be the same God the next 40 years. What do I have to worry about? Why do I need to be afraid of tomorrow? The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Notice this next phrase. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. The early morning, the shepherd would lead the sheep out to where the grass was green and the water was pure. Long about noontime or before, maybe 10 o'clock, the sheep would get thirsty. The wise shepherd would not let the sheep eat, drink with its stomach filled with undigested grass. Instead, he would command him to lie down and be still and cool off. Study the lives of great people. You'll find they had periods of quietness. Before God could ever break through into the life of Moses, he had to get him out there away from the crowd on that hillside. Then it was he saw the bush that was burning. Before God could ever break through into the life of St. Paul, got him out on that lonely Damascus road. Then it was he saw the heavenly vision. Study the lives of our Lord. You'll see how many times Jesus got away from the crowd to be alone. You know what I think is the worst sin in America? The worst sin. We are in too big of a hurry. We're all the time running. We don't have time to stop and be quiet and be still. I visit a lot of people in the hospital. Many times I say to people in the hospital, sometimes when you're on your back, it's a lot easier to look up. And many times that's true. When you're on your back, and sometimes it may be that God might put us on our backs to force us to look up. I read in a story not long ago about a group of American explorers that went to Africa. And they got over there and they got them some native guides, and the first morning they rushed. The second morning they rushed. Third morning they rushed. That's typical of us. We are all the time rushing somewhere. We are the goingest people that's ever lived. During the last war, some American boys were visiting a volcano. And one of them looked down at that boiling mass of lava and said, I declare, it looks like hell. And the guide said, you Americans have been everywhere, haven't you? But one morning these American explorers got up to Russia. And these guides were sitting out under the tree. And they said, come on, we're in a hurry, we must go. And the guide said, we no go today. We rest today to let our souls catch up with our bodies. And I think sometimes we have outrun our souls. He maketh me to lie down. Another place he says, be still and know that I am God. We need to draw apart. That's something the preaching mission does. We draw apart. We come together with a great number of other people. We sing and we pray. We think about God. Johnson City is a better city because of a mission like this. You're a better person because you go to the church and you worship the Lord. Well, there are so many of these phrases that I would like to lift up. There are 9 of them, but let me mention this one. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. This is what Phillips Brooks called the nightingale of the song. Because, said he, the nightingale sings its sweetest when the night is the darkest. Now, I'm sure there's no darker night any of us face than when somebody we love more than we love ourselves enters into this experience we call death. Or maybe when we ourselves are facing that very experience. Now I feel sure David meant that, but he meant more than just the experience of death. In Palestine there is a valley called the Valley of the Shadow of Death. And in David's day, there was a road that went winding down through that valley. And it was a very frightening place for the sheep to walk. But they could walk through that valley without fear if the shepherd walked with them. His presence made the difference. And what David is talking about is every crisis in our lives, this valley of the shadow, this moment we're not sure we can go through, but with the presence of the eternal God, we're not afraid. I get a lot of phone calls. I especially get a lot of phone calls around 12 to 2 o'clock in the morning. Rarely a night goes by I don't have at least one. And I can tell you about them, every one of them. They're not drunk people. They're people, for the most part, who are facing some difficult crisis. For the most part, they are people who live alone. And they go to bed at night, and they toss, and they turn, they can't sleep. And long about midnight, they reach a place they can't stand it any longer. Many of them have listened to me, and they think about me, and they'll call me. Most of them are people I don't know. But I never show irritation. I'm never unhappy. I have a phone right by my bed, and I can talk to them. And I talk to them as patiently as I can. And I always read this verse. And I say, underscore that word through. Yea, though I walk through. You know, you can stand anything if you know you're going to get through. And David is saying, you're going to get through. And I say to these people at the phone, I say, now it'll be 4 hours till daylight. Now you don't have to sleep, but you can stand it this 4 hours. And you just hold on, and in 4 hours now the sun will come up. And things will look better. And we need to know, we everyone going to face these crises. I was in another city not long ago, and I spoke at night, and after the meeting, a man came up to me and said, 3 of us have a private plane up here, and we're flying back home tonight. I'd be glad if you'd fly with us. Well, that saved me spending the night, and so I went with them. It was a plane that seated about 10 people, I guess. Had a pilot up there, and we got in the plane, and he took off. We were going on pretty good, and we ran into a thunderstorm. Now, I've been in a good many storms in the air, but nothing like that storm. I want to tell you, that plane twisted, turned, and dropped, and it'd go up. I could see the lightning out the window, and the pouring rain, and I didn't think that plane would hold together. The truth is, I got so scared, I repented of some things I hadn't even done. Now, that's the truth. But after a while, the pilot's voice came over the speaker. And he said, now, I know this has been real rough, and we're still not out of it yet, but I want to tell you, I can see the end of this turbulence. And in just a matter of 3 or 4 minutes now, we'll be out of it. And it'll be clear all the way on. And suddenly I wasn't afraid anymore. It was still rough and bumpy. But suddenly I wasn't afraid because I didn't mind the bumps. I had the assurance we were going to get through. We come to these crises in our lives. They can be frightening experiences. We remember the words of David, yea, though I walk through the valley. That's the key word, through. If you can get through, you're going to make it. Well, there are 9 of these phrases, but then David came to the conclusion. And that really is the thrilling part of the 23rd Psalm. These 9 phrases are just preliminary to the conclusion. He's saying, with a God like this God, the first thing is, tomorrow will be good. With a God like this God, you can look forward with hope. He said, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. That's a thrilling thing. You're not pessimistic. You face the future with hope. One of the things my wife and I have enjoyed through the years is going to New York. New York always fascinates me. And we go up there ever so often. I like to go to some of those plays. But one time we went to see South Pacific. That isn't the best play. You've seen South Pacific. But Mary Martin was singing in that play. And I wanted to hear Mary Martin. I want to confess to you tonight, across the years, I've had a little crush on Mary Martin. I think she's wonderful. And in that play, there's a song entitled, I'm a Cockeyed Optimist. It isn't a great hymn. But in that song, I never had heard it before. She came right out on the front of the stage and sang it. There's one little phrase. I'm stuck like a dope, D-O-P-E, dope, with a thing called hope. I can't get it out of my heart. And you know, that little phrase just sort of stuck with me. And I walked out of that theater that night just saying, I'm stuck like a dope with a thing called hope. I can't get it out of my heart. And that phrase has just sort of become a part of me. Rarely a day ever passes that I don't find myself saying, I'm stuck like a dope with a thing called hope. I can't get it out of my heart. You know, one of the best things I ever heard, somebody said, my disappointment may be God's appointment. My disappointment may be God's appointment. The thing you had your heart set on, then you missed, and you had to take another way. It might be that was the plan of God all the time, and the best. Up in Illinois, there was a little Swedish boy. He grew up in Illinois. His family was poor. He was poor. But he had a dream. He wanted to be a photographer and take pictures. And he saved his pennies. Finally, he got enough money, and he ordered a book on how to be a photographer. But somehow the publisher mixed it up and sent him a book on how to be a ventriloquist. He said he cried for a week. He didn't know what the word meant. And he didn't know he could have sent the book back, and he didn't have money for postage anyway. But after about a week, he picked it up one day and he began looking at it. And he got interested and he began to read it. And he began to study it and work at it. And he learned how to throw his voice. And he made him a little wooden dummy. And he named his dummy Charlie McCarthy. And out of that experience, Edgar Bergen built a wonderful career and a wonderful life. And how do I know? Maybe it wasn't just a mistake of the publisher. Maybe the Lord sent him that book. You can't tell. Your disappointment. Then the person here tonight who hadn't suffered some disappointment. But it may be God's appointment. Do you remember the first time you were in love? Now that brings up some memories, doesn't it? The first time you were in love. I remember I was in the 7th grade. I thought I never was going to get out of the 7th grade, really. Her name was Betty. Betty was the sweetest girl. Oh, she was wonderful. I loved that girl. But a new boy moved to town, and he got interested in her, and she got interested in him, and she left me behind. I want to tell you, Betty broke my heart. I told my mother, I said, Mama, I'll never love another girl as long as I live. Well, we moved away from that town, and I didn't see her anymore. But some years later, I was preaching one night in Miami. We had a church down there called the White Temple, and I was preaching in that church. A lot of people there that night. And after the service, some people came by and spoke with me, and this lady came up and spoke to me. And she said, Charles, this is Betty. Now let me tell you something. 30 years and 4 children make a lot of difference. A lot of difference. And you know, I looked at that girl and I said, Lord, thank you for saving me. Your disappointment may be God's appointment. I don't know. David is saying, though, with a God like this God, tomorrow will be good. Surely, goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. I'd like to say it one more time about Mary Martin. You know, David would have liked that song. Knowing David, he would have liked Mary Martin, I'll tell you that. I'm stuck like a dope with a thing called hope. I can't get it out of my heart. And then David says, not only tomorrow, but beyond tomorrow will also be good. And I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. You know, one of the things I enjoy, the church where I'm the minister is right downtown on the main street of a city. Many times along about 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I like to go out and sit on the front steps of that church. To me, that's the most thrilling sight I see. Suddenly, the sidewalks are just full of people. The buses are crowded and people are standing in them. The cars are just bumper to bumper. What's happening? A city has done its day's work, and now it's going home. You know, there's something thrilling about going home. John Howard Payne looked out the window of a boarding house in Paris, and suddenly he got homesick as he saw all these people. He sat down and began to write, mid pleasures and palaces, though we may roam, be it ever so humble, there's no place like home. You know, the most important thing in your life, the most precious possession you have is your home. I know some people that don't have a home. I tell you, that's bad. I really think the saddest thing that Jesus ever said was when he said the birds of the air have nests, the foxes have holes, but the Son of Man has not where to lay his head. The fact that Jesus didn't have a home, I think, was his heaviest burden. Your home is important. Your home means so much. But I want to tell you something worse than not having a home. not having anywhere to go at night. It's to not have any assurance that beyond this life, there's anywhere to go. Not having the assurance that there's such a thing as a home beyond this world. And I tell you, without that assurance, I question that it's worth the struggle. But with that assurance, you can stand whatever you have to stand. David is saying, a God like this God is not going to desert his children. He's going to hold them in his hand. If I were to ask you tonight, if you have some loved one, somebody you dearly love, who has died, how many would hold up their hands? Everybody here, I guess. That's a hard experience. Ever so often, I come home in the afternoon, my wife and I are getting a car. We'll drive out a city in our street called Westheimer, out to the edge of the city. And we'll turn in the gates of a little cemetery out there. It's a lovely little cemetery. And we'll wind around and we'll stop. And we'll get out of the car. And we'll stand there. There are two little graves there, just about that long. And those are our two little grandsons. And I think about those little boys. One of them was born and he lived a day. Then a year or two later, the next one was born and he lived a week. Then we took him out there and buried him in the ground. Now I know something of the hurt and the disappointment and the sorrow, just as you know. But I want to tell you something as I stand here. There'll come a day when I'll see my little grandsons, when I can play with them and love them. They'll love me. I believe that. You have not lost your loved ones who have died. Your life is not going to end up in some old cemetery out here. You're going to live forever. And I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. No wonder we love the 23rd Psalm. It strengthens our faith. It gives us more assurance than anything I know. God bless you. And that's why we have the preaching mission. The whole purpose is to help us to understand better that God knows us and God loves us. And I pray that's what will be accomplished during these days. God bless you.
Shall we stand? May God bless thee and keep thee. The Lord make his face to shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. The Lord lift up his countenance upon thee and give thee peace. Amen.
Lawson? Dr. Lawson, would you please call the hospital immediately? Dr. Lawson, please call the hospital immediately.